Starting off, we're going to go with who's Pizzo and Associates. And for those who don't know, Pizzo Associates is a ecological restoration company with over 30 years of experience between stewardship, restoration, and prescribed fire. Currently, over the last 8 years, we are averaging about 100 burns a year. Anywhere from small quarter acre retention ponds to 250 acre plus burns or DNR or whatever it may be. Like mentioned, we burn and work from Iowa through Illinois, Indiana, Southwest Michigan, a little bit of Wisconsin and Southern Illinois, not so much. We are set up to run 6 burn crews, to which 2 crews from each one of our 3 Illinois yards. We have yards in Lamont, Leland, South Elgin, and a support from our Southwest Michigan facility. 2 crews are dedicated to the Cook County Forest Preserve, the other 4 pick up the slack and take on everything else. All of our employees either go through the NWCG certification program or have come to us with the Chicago Wilderness training already. Each one of our crews is set up with a minimum of 6 people with a CPBM that has a minimum of 5 years experience. Maybe a recent CPBM, but they have been with the company or ourselves for 5 years and been on 5 years of employees. With a CPBM, we gotta have an apprentice just because we want to train the next generation, the next people to take over. We have an equipment manager assigned to each one of our crews. They are responsible for basically the inventory. They check off everything before we leave the yards every morning, and they make sure everything is in that truck and trailer before we leave the site. Because I'm sure you've all had the person, or is that person, that has put that flapper or something up against a tree and walked off and forgot it and had to go back the next day to pick it up. That's a problem. Radios, same thing, I don't know why, but we have to assign our radios to each one of our individuals because they tendency to bend over, put the log out or whatever it may be, the radio falls out, next thing you know it's melted and can't be it, and that person is responsible for assigning each individual radio to make sure they get it back. Tanks, water, winter, freezes, so responsible for filling everything in the morning, and they are responsible at the end of the day to make sure all our lines are blown clean and or stored inside so we don't have to deal with frozen equipment in the morning. And a fuel manager. I like to have one person on each crew responsible for mixing the torch fuel every day so I know who to go back and complain or say they did a great job on it. And all the equipment. In the background, you'll see each one of our crews has at least an ATV with at least 75 to 100 gallons on it, and not in picture is a truck with at least 250 gallons of water on it as well. Again, this is our minimum setup, 6 people. Most crews are 8 to 9 people, 8 work day. So why am I here today? I don't have an answer. But I'm going to talk about our aspect as a contractor. Being a contractor, we are here to do the service for the good, but we have to make money at the end of the day doing what we do. So I am going to talk about all the little hiccups, side setbacks, hurdles, frustrations I have dealt with in my 15 years as a contractor. I will start talking about the sales side of things, which I know a little bit about, not everything about it. Then we'll get into the contracting side of things, which deals with the moment we have the signed contract, our planning, our permitting process, the notification process we go through, the scheduling of the crews throughout the burn season, which is the difficult part, our process for site selections for the day, planning for the day of the burn, and then anything that may happen the day of the burn that skews from the plan. Sales team issues. As a contractor, it comes down to cost. That's the biggest thing we always get is it's just so expensive. It is. Quick turnarounds. People asking for a burn in February, expecting them to get, or asking for a burn in March, and they ask us in February. Dealing with the expert client. We'll get to that. So that was my favorite. For some reason, this is an issue too. It's beyond my control, but property lines in the private sector. Being a contractor, we are subject to a lot of competitive bid situations. I would say 75% of the time, competitive bids come down to lowest bid wins. Lowest bids obviously is a race to the bottom line. Who can do the job with the least amount of resources? What's our number one resource?
People.
Exactly, people. People are hard to find now anyways to do it, but now we're trying to take people off the burn crew. Down to the bottom line, you gotta do everything perfect. We've all done burns. How many have gone to the T exactly perfect the way they're supposed to be? No delays, no setbacks, no nothing. Doesn't happen too often. Weather delays, equipment issues, personnel issues, it all affects the bottom line when it comes to that. More prep work expected. Marketing to a site that thought was prep ready for us, didn't happen. Not all of our bids or projects are obviously low bid competitive stuff. We do have people that come to us personally and just say, we want you to burn. Again, it still comes down to the cost. A lot of people still feel that this is a few $100s, come out, light a match, walk away, it's done. So sticker shock takes a long time for the sales team to explain why it costs as much as it does. As we know, there's a lot of hours spent in the permitting process, the notification process, the prep work, and the burn itself. As we know, we all should agree, right? This is a skilled trade, skilled labor. It's not that anybody can pick up a lighter and just go do something. And it says it there. Skilled labor isn't cheap, and cheap labor isn't skilled. So that little sticker goes a long way with dealing with individual homeowners and HOAs or whatever it may be on the private side of things. Are there any other contractors in the room besides me and Evan? Former contractors, maybe? Nick? Okay.
I have a question for.
Absolutely.
Is that all right if I?
Yes, please do.
Okay.
Make it an interactive one.
So I have a lot of people with CRP that want it burned, and they're looking for a contractor. I'm in Bureau County, which I think you guys can cover.
I will cover anything.
Okay. Do you have like a minimum price point
Yes.
or like
Yeah.
a minimum acreage?
No minimum acres, but there's a minimum price point.
What is that?
Right now it's about $5,000.
Okay.
Per acre? No.
No, that's
Per
just,
burn.
that doesn't per burn. It doesn't matter if it's quarter acre, it doesn't matter if it's 100 acres. Its size doesn't matter. If it becomes a 2-day project or a day and a half, that adds that at that point. $5,000 for us to get out there for a day to prep it, burn it, and whatever.
The higher complexity burns require more people, more equipment, and cost more.
So, for my former contractors here, has anybody ever been to a pre-bid meeting in the middle of February with expectations of a burn in March? Happens. Has anybody held one of them meetings? Shame on you. Yeah, it takes time. Permits take time, especially EPA, county, state, or county and local. It's a whole process. You can't do one without the other. For several years, we have been told that I have a permit, you can use our permit, and it doesn't work that way. We've not bid on certain projects because of it. We, stick to our guns and say, it's our permit, we have to have it, we're doing the burn.
So if you have a permit, then you want someone else to burn for you.
This is Evan, by the way.
I'm Evan, yeah.
Evan is my burn coordinator, so he's.
That can't happen. It's not allowed. You have to have the permit in your name. The people conducting.
Landowner permit doesn't count if we're the ones doing the burn. There might be a couple loopholes to get around that. Maybe the landowner can take part in the burn or run the burn, but that usually doesn't work out for us.
So do you need a permit for every site or every county?
Every site.
So you might
The only
have 100
around that,
permits.
when we burn for the county, we have an open burn for the Cook County Forest Reserve, because obviously you don't know what we're gonna burn that day. So all of our sites, private, local, whatever it may be, everyone has that site, or a permit.
300 permits right
Yeah.
And I got a little freaked out based on the last session when there's supposed to be an EPA
Yeah.
smoke permit.
That
That
kinda
one
worked.
didn't jive with me too well.
And you might have 200 permits you weren't able to use that year
Correct.
because the weather doesn't cooperate too.
now. Or we don't have a contract for that site.
Yeah.
We're pretty good about getting through all our permits.
Yeah.
We do renew a few on occasion just to have them in our back pocket, but I would say over the last 8-9 years since Evan and I have been running this stuff, there's not maybe 1 or 2 burns a season that doesn't get done on our end, so we're pretty good about that. The expert client. This is that Facebook member, native plant group, or YouTube video person that has watched something. 10, 15 minutes, they know everything is about the burn. I've had a conversation that I'll give with you guys here in a minute. Multiple times in my career, you go out, we get a phone call from a client, I want to burn on my property. Okay, we'll go out, take a look at the property, assess it, see what it takes. We'll go out, look at it, do our thing, and then go back to the client. We don't suggest you burn. You've got a pretty bad infestation of buckthorn, honeysuckle, whatever it may be. We suggest you spend your money on clearing it first. Get some sunlight down on the ground, get some actual burnable material. Oh, you're just a contractor. You're just trying to upsell me on something that I don't really need. Okay, we are a contractor. We're not trying to upsell you on anything else. It's not going to work. There's tons of leaf litter out there, they say. There's years of leaf litter. Yes, there is, but it's buckthorn and honeysuckle. It's not going to burn. I could put a blowtorch on the thing. It's not going to burn. Whatever, you guys are just upselling. So, okay, I'll burn it. I'll try it. See what happens. Go 2, 3, 4 times, give it a shot. What do you think happens? Nothing. Who's pissed off? And who are they pissed off at?
You.
Right. Even though we tried to tell them, it's not going to work. They are very consistent. We are a contractor. Essentially, it's free money. You're not gonna turn it down. Same situation almost. Get a phone call. Hey, I want to burn my property. Okay. Let's go take a look at it. So how much you got here? I'm not sure. Where's your property line? Over there somewhere. Used to be a big oak tree there. Used to mark it by that way or something. I can't burn it unless I know property lines. I don't want to accidentally burn the neighbor's property. I don't want to short you on what you're paying for in those situations. That is not a major issue for us, but it is something that we deal with more regularly. If you're a property owner, you should know where your property is. We've had situations where we burned like an HOA property. Found out that the homeowner actually owns a portion of that. They were pretty pissed off. We burned their backyard without notifying them. Okay, we're done with the sales side of things. This is my territory now. We get into the contract side. Contract side, the sales team gets it, and it gets it to me. What do you think the first phone call is that I get once we get the contract?
When are you gonna start?
Right. What day will my burn be on? I have no idea. Sometime late fall, maybe early spring. Sometime in the next calendar year from the time you get it. That's always number one. 9 times out of 10, that's the number one question I get. This is a pet peeve of mine. I get the contract, signed everything down to the line. I forgot to mention. You forgot to mention what? I forgot to mention that you can't burn on these such and dates, or you can only burn on weekends, or we're on vacation this certain week, something along those lines. That comes up quite a bit, especially if we're dealing around schools and stuff. You can only burn during spring break. Well, everybody's got spring break at the same time, and we've got 30 other ones to get done at the same time too. I can see there's drainage, plastic culverts or whatever from our sump pumps or from our downspouts. There's electrical wires running to all the lights that are in my trees that nobody told me about. I gotta go find them and prep them. Or I walked up to the property and there was some sort of art piece in the middle of it they didn't bother to tell us about, and it just has to get burned. Granted, the sales team does a great job of looking at sites, but they're not going to see everything when they're out there walking. That's always what gets me the most, is trying to get more bang for their buck, not by giving all the detail around that. The unrealistic notifications. I want a week's notice before you can burn.
Before the day of the.
I'll give you an option, or I'll tell you that it might happen in a week. I'll tell you 3 days that you got a better shot of it happening. But I'm not going to tell you until the night before, knowing what the weather's going to be, that I'll be on your site to burn. I know it sucks, but that's just how it is. We live in Illinois. The weather changes on a dime. I don't know what it's like in southern Illinois, if it changes as much as it does up here, but It could be snowing by the time we leave here today, for all we know. Just stress the importance. The second question I get most often is what day will my burn be? I can't. It's June. What do you want me to tell you? Can't do anything about it. This happens a lot too. My friend, it's not 100% black, you might get a discounted rate. No, I'm sorry. Your sales associates have told you that our goal is never to burn 100% of the property. Granted, it does happen quite often in the open prairies, mesic stuff, but our goal is never to do it. We shoot for 65 to 70% is what we would consider a successful burn. We like to leave the patterns, the open standing stuff for all the little critters and anything that might need it for shelter or protection and whatever it may be. But no, you don't get a discount. Sorry. And for the third time, you get asked, what day will my burn be on? At this point, I'm usually at the point where I'll just tell you when I'm done. I wish I could do that. It'd be nice, save a lot of headaches, may cost more, but it'd be worth it. Time to time, we do get clients where they dictate when we burn. They will call us the night before and say, I need you to come burn today, or tomorrow, I'm sorry. So we can work with that, we can anticipate it. It's not always the most ideal solution, because at that point, I'm out of control. They control my team, not me.
Could you give some examples
Yeah,
of
why would they
why?
want that?
What?
Why would they want that?
There, check name tags first before we start saying anything.
Yeah.
Working with, we'll just go with the TNC out in Indiana, they tell us when to burn. Sometimes with the DNR in the past, they've said, you're coming out today or tomorrow, whatever it may be. I don't know, just this is how they do it. Their property, they want to tell us when to burn it, and we're just the resource at that point.
It's tough. So now it's a little bit more of a, I won't call them an expert client, but qualified.
Well, these people,
They're picky,
those
they're-
people know. I would say they know what's going on.
Yeah.
They are the legitimate expert, and it's their property, but it affects my scheduling big time. Is that what you wanted?
That's exactly what I'm asking.
And if you have enough hours with that agency, maybe it's worth the hassle of having them drive the bus.
Drive the bus.
You know, telling you when to
Drive
go.
your
Oh, gotcha. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't sometimes.
Yeah.
Maybe they've got a contractor coming in to do something that needs to be done before the contractor arrives.
Not typically. They just like to be in control for that particular agency. And there's others that have said when they want to do it and when they do it. But it's maybe 5 of our 100 sites we do in a year, so it's not a huge inconvenience, but it does mess things up a little bit. Now we've gotten past all the questions from the clients, we'll get into our process of permitting and planning and such. We get a map, get the idea where we're going to go, then we start working on our smoke sensitive sites, looking for the schools, daycares, medical facilities, just like all of you do, I'm assuming, I'm hoping, right? As a contractor, we're put in more of the urban development settling or rural settings with HOAs and stuff too, so we're closer to schools, we're closer to railroads, we're closer to busier roads, just things that I think most of you probably aren't as much as we are, maybe I'm wrong. I know you have your challenges, so do we. This gives us more wind restrictions, so you could have a school to the east, a hospital to the west, and some railroad to the south. That gives you a south wind, it's the only day you can burn on that particular site. Reduces the number of days, obviously. It's just, it adds restrictions to us. Permitting process is time consuming, as we all know. We'll start off with our IPA, because we all know now we all have to have our own IPA for every one of the sites that we're going to burn. IPA is pretty quick for the most part if you're preemptive enough and go like a couple months prior to the burn season. The closer you get to the burn season and start applying for permits, the less likely are you going to get them in a timely manner. I believe I received one yesterday for a spring burn that was supposed to get done sometime in April.
Is there a fee for every permit you get? No.
Yeah, stressing, all contractors must have their own by EPA. After you get EPA, you gotta go to county level. County level's pretty quick. Cook County has been great ever since COVID hit. That used to have a huge delay in our process. If anything, the Cook County could take 2 months sometimes to get a permit, but now, whatever they did differently has been phenomenal. Love it. Local permits, you don't know until you look. You gotta start calling the fire departments. This is where we get into a lot of, I don't say problems or anything like that, but it becomes an issue. This is where I need my notes. I've had local permits tell us that we can't burn with winds over 10 miles an hour, which makes it extremely difficult. I've had permits say you can only burn on the weekends. Some that has had time restrictions, you can only burn from 10 to 4. And it's everything out, done, mopped up, left the site. I can do that in the fall, can't do that in the spring. Usually not till noon, until 1 o'clock before we need a light. First time ever, had one this year that says we only allow 1 controlled burn in the village at a time, so it's first come, first served. You call the day of, and if you get it, you get it. We actually had 2 burns in that same ordinance this year, so we had to call back, say we're done, and hurry up and call again to make sure nobody else called in that 30 seconds we hung up the phone, because that's just was a pain in the ass. So yeah, no problem. Get a permit. Just come down to the city hall, and we'll give it to you the morning of. City hall's closed on weekends and every other government holiday that falls within the burn season too. So can't get one there. Just gotta get it the morning of. They won't give it to you the day before. So again, what does that do? It just restricts to the number of burnable days for that particular site that we can burn on. I'm really cruising through this here. What we do with P-Zone Associates for our notification process is we do our due diligence. Obviously, we go door to door and put door hangers on every dwelling within close proximity. It used to be, years ago, we would do a 1/4 mile in any direction of the burn parameters. That took way too long. So now it's like a block and a half, just where we'll know we'll get smoke issues. This causes issues for us because we'll get phone calls from the moment they're on the doors. Let's say for every project we do, we get 10 phone calls. 4 of those phone calls are going to be somebody calling, I got a notification that you're burning my house down. Okay. Read me what the notification says. Oh, you're burning the natural area. Read all the details, please.
So do you think, because we had some door hangers made up this spring and I never used them, maybe I don't want to use them.
In the long run, I think it's a good thing to do because you want as many people to be aware of what you're doing and why you're doing it. Our hangers are pretty detailed, and it leaves you with a hotline number to call and leave a message. And if you want to be informed of what's going on, when it's happening, then we'll call you if need be. So.
Do you ring the bell or just run away?
No, I just on the door and then I walk away. Can't do mailboxes because then you're dealing with government things.
So I just explained a little bit about the phone situation, is that right?
Sure.
The phone number on the flyer goes to a voicemail box that gets recorded and sent to me, and depending on how angry the person is, I'll wait to call them back. But it is, you'll see how this develops. Most of the time it's somebody who's really angry at first, and then as they start to read the flyer to you while they're leaving you a message, they figure it out, and they're calmed down by the end of the phone call.
I was just gonna say that it's better to do those kind of notifications if you get a smoke complaint and the pollution board or EPA reaches out to you. That's the first question they're gonna ask you.
Yes.
Did you notify?
How did you notify people and stuff? So it's worth the trouble.
And on your EPA permit application, it asks you how you're going to notify people, and if you have a good explanation of how you're going to do it, that's another thing that can help reduce your liability.
I know when I first started with P-Zone, all I did was put out signs.
Yeah.
And we've definitely progressed to this next level.
But that was 2008 though, right?
I started in 2006, 7, sorry, you're right. So 4 of those, 3 of them burning under these wind conditions or whatever seemed very irresponsible. We'll do the notifications anywhere up from 6 months prior to the burn to 3 days prior. They're usually done on our crappy days, we'll call it, that we can't go out and do stewardship work or restoration or anything like that, just something to get done. 9 times out of 10, it's on those high wind days where, yeah, it would be very irresponsible to be out burning, and again, people just don't read the flyer. 2 will just be that little lady or little man that just at home by himself and just wants somebody to talk to, just call. But 1, it only takes is 1 person that will call and say, hey, I have legitimate health concerns, I can't be in the smoke. So you start the conversation, okay, would you be willing to leave your house if we were to give you enough notification for the day so we can conduct the burn? Sure, no problem, it's not a big deal. If they can't, they are restricted to their home or whatever it may be, then we have to change our burn plans and now add another restriction, we can't burn with that particular wind blowing smoke towards that house. So that one adds restrictions on our own end. Animals too, horses, for some reason, people don't like smoke on their horses, I'm not sure why. I'm not a horse person.
It spooks, I'm scared.
Does it?
It is what it is.
So yeah, those people need a couple days notice so they can move their horses. Or Sedago.
Question, going back to your door hangers, how much advance notice are you giving people on those?
Minimum 3 days, and it could be 6 months to 8 months prior to it.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and they usually call right away, within hours of these things going up, and they want to be notified of what it is, and Evan does a wonderful job of keeping track of all those people, and then they become part of the burn plan and notification list.
Chris says they send out postcards.
Mhm.
So what kind of feedback do you get when you send postcards?
You know, I'm not sure. I'm sure we get some calls of people with the same thing, like health concerns or something like that. They just want more information.
Okay, they're not calling you, they're calling.
No, it's
somebody
just
else.
the same thing. We just have them, they
It's a
call,
hotline.
it's a generic number that, goes to the district and
We've tried the direct mailers, found it not to work too well. We've not gone through the postal service, because that is surprisingly expensive. At least it
Yeah.
used to be when we looked at it a while ago. I don't know if the prices have changed.
It's going up in
4 or
July.
5 years. It's gone up.
It's going up in July.
Well, then, it's sick of what it is. I need to keep my crews busy doing something anyway.
I send out postcards and I don't get hardly any calls. And I have my direct line on there, my direct cell, and I get 2 or 3 year calls.
We get about 1 call per 100, we get about 1% response.
Yeah.
It's about 1 in 100.
I feel like a door hanger becomes like more personalized, you know, like someone.
It's not
walked in
like,
my
yeah, it
property.
doesn't look like it's junk mail in your just, flyers or whatever it may be. You do gotta be careful, obviously, the windy situations, if they're not hung on there twice, it becomes a very big problem when you're dealing with apartment complexes. Because we're not going in and doing every single door in those, stuff like that. Sometimes we'll hang it to the door or tape it to the door, especially like the apartment complex where you gotta go inside to get into your dwelling and stuff, all the mailboxes are inside, we don't have keys to get in, so we just tape a couple of the door and that's hopefully good enough. It's the best we can do at that point.
Sometimes we'll call the management company.
If you're gonna do it, the way we do it, notify the police departments before you go do it. More phone calls than we get, we've had more police called on us for going door to door because it's suspicious behavior, somebody just going door to door to put it on there. We laugh and giggle about it, but it was a pretty serious situation for us a couple of years ago where the police were called because unfortunately one of my crew leaders was black and, you know, they thought he was the wrong person. So he got harassed pretty good. Scheduling. When I ever interview anybody from the get-go, I tell them our burn season goes from the middle of October through the middle of April. I like to give myself a good buffer there, just so you never know what's gonna happen. They were told they are only guaranteed 6 days off in that time frame. And that's gonna be Thanksgiving and the day after Thanksgiving, Christmas, the day after Christmas, New Year's, and Easter. Obviously, if the snow's on the ground, we're not gonna be burning through January, February, but I have burned in the beginning of February before. It wasn't even that long ago, 4 or 5 years ago. I think we had a really good spell when we could. So that becomes an issue with the crews, especially with the younger people coming in fresh out of college that are used to that spring break period or that week-long Christmas vacation that they have and spend time with their family and homes. And you're in the real world now. So obviously, weather takes everything, keep your weekends open, makes it hard to make plans with families and stuff like that, but just the career we all chose. Scheduling, actual scheduling through the season is probably one of the most difficult things it is for a contractor, in my opinion, to do. I'm responsible to making sure everybody gets a healthy paycheck. They get their 40 hours in a week. But I'm also responsible to make sure we're not going into huge amounts of overtime. And seems to be the theme here in Illinois is the only time we can burn is on the freaking weekends. So I have to watch the weather very diligently to make sure that if there's a chance to burn on the weekends, we've got to shut down sometime during the middle of the week, just to keep those hours under control. Obviously with OT, time and a half, competitive bid, low bid situation, that doesn't account for those kind of rates. So it's a loss to our pocket if we're burning too much on overtime rates. Everybody's burning, we all know that. Kind of hard to have a personal life when you don't know what your schedule's going to be like. It's one of the biggest complaints I get from my staff. Something that probably most of you are, maybe you are, I don't know. Do you guys have to follow the DOT hours of service limits? Since we're a contractor, we have commercial licenses, and we can only work 7 days in a row. That's the max we can ever do, or 60 hours. And by law, they have to have at least 2 days off. So again, watching the weather to make sure we don't hit in that weekends. It's been at least 3 or 4 years since we've had a good stretch of weather where we've had to burn, or could have burned 7, 8 days in a row for burn season. I can't. 7 days is the most I can do, and I have to shut down. So I've lost burns in the past because of it, and it just was the year this came into effect. It had to have been 2018, maybe 2019, when it's became an issue for us. Ooh, that's blurry. Evan and I talk on the phone constantly throughout the day. I myself have not been out on the burns as much as I have been in the past. Evan's out there in the field with them every day. But starting off the spring, we have about 40 sites usually, typically. So we got to narrow down to 6 is what our goal is to be here. So we start off just simply by smoke management, what we're going for, which sites can burn on which winds. If I remember correctly, if I'm not, just go with it, Evan. X's stand for the days that we can't burn with those winds. O's are good days, and if they're blank, it's like, yeah, we can make it work if we had to. So you can see there's a lot of situations, and you all deal with the same thing, but I'm dealing with 40 sites compared to maybe 10 or 15, whatever it is you guys handle in a season. So we go off the wind parameters, that gives us about 10 to 15 options. We need to reduce it. Now we go down to our permit level restrictions. Which ones say we only burn on weekends, which ones can we only burn on certain third moon or third Wednesday of the month kind of situation. They know weird permits. That'll knock down 1, 2, maybe 3 sites. So we're down to about 10 at this point. Then you go down to the client restrictions. Well, I'm not going to be on site. You can't burn that day. Okay, move on to the next one. Now we're down to about 6 to 10 sites where our list is. Then we look at the actual humidity levels and see what will burn the best. Obviously, higher humidities we'll try for our prairies, grasslands, stuff like that. Lower humidities we're going to be focusing on our woodlands. Typical, everybody does the same thing. We still can't get the site list down to about 6, and we'll try to figure out which sites we have another chance at down the road. If it's early in the season, a west wind's dominating wind, we can try that another day, chance of that. Again, like I said, 6 sites is our ideal selection. We start making our plans at least 3 days in advance. We all know it's going to change. So we have a plan, we have a backup plan to that one, and then a 4th backup plan just in case. We plan for 1 scenario. Our number 1 scenario is 4 crews burning on our selected sites and 2 dedicated to Cook County Forest Reserve. Scenario 2 is Cook County doesn't want to burn that day, so we have 6 sites on the private side of things that we want to burn. Scenario 3 is similar to scenario 1, but then I get that phone call from that client that wants me to burn tomorrow. We try to anticipate that phone call as best we can. With repeating customers, it's easier to do, but when you get a new one, they can throw a wrench in the gears pretty quick. And for, again, the county doesn't want to go, then we have that phone call, and we just got to scramble to get things together last minute. So what happens with us a lot is we're doing a lot of notifications to clients to say, hey, there's a good chance we're going to come out to burn, but we don't actually get the opportunity to do that. They get a little upset that you didn't come out and do it. Some things are just out of my control. Day of the burn, we don't set anything in stone until at least 5 p.m. that night. Because again, the weather comes out at what, 4 o'clock is the most updated one. By that time, I'm not gonna wait till 8 o'clock when the next one comes out. 4 o'clock will make a hard set stone, this is what we're gonna do. Everybody is assigned their crew, their position on the crew, their start time, and their ignition time, and all the equipment that goes with it. This goes out to all of the employees, this goes out to the sales team, and the sales team make final calls to their employees and said, yes, this is a go, this is where we're coming to do your site tomorrow. Day of the burn, same thing with everybody is, maybe not with you guys, but the client changes their mind. They are sick that day, they don't want us out there, whatever it may be, but they redirect us. I'm out of crew. I don't have another option to send a crew somewhere else because it didn't make notifications. I gotta figure something else out for them to do. Happens a lot, especially with HOAs. They know we're coming out, so they'll decide to throw all their lawn clippings, their grass clippings, their dog crap out into natural areas and expect us to burn around it. Normally I don't care, I'll burn through it, but if it's a pile of fresh cut lawn, I'll burn around it. I'm not gonna sit there and let that thing smolder for hours and waste my time. That happens a lot. Fire departments don't answer their phone calls all the time either. So we'll call 2, 3, 4 times, eventually leave a couple messages and just assume everything's going to plan. Nobody's ever called us and said you couldn't burn, but for some reason fire departments don't answer their phones. Dispatch will, obviously, but the fire department themselves don't. This happened to us this year. We were down in Peoria burning. We were down there long enough that there was a change in the dispatch. First shift didn't tell the second shift what was going on. They come blazing in and figure out that everything was okay. They ended up staying around for like a half an hour and watching us. But communication between dispatch is something that happens to us once in a while too. This also happened to us this year. I'm not going to name names on this one, but we were told the site was prepped and ready to go. And we showed up, there was no prep lines, and it was supposed to be a quick 100-acre burn. Ended up being over 200, I think. Maybe it ended up just burning the whole thing for them. That's pretty much it.
Have you thought about adding a surcharge to the people that are particularly demanding and hard to deal with? You'll pick a nicer name for it than that. There you go, yeah.
No, definitely not. Anything else? Yes, Nick.
Can you burn tomorrow for us?
I got a question on pricing. You said 5,000 was a lower level. How about a site that's say 250 acres, woodland, it's got slopes, and we want you to come and prepare the lines and do the fire? What
Something
kind
like
of
that would
money?
probably be like a 2-day thing, so it would probably be a day's worth of prepping the lines, I would assume. And then the size of the crew, what do you think it could be done with? An 8-person crew?
Yeah, 8 at least, yeah.
Yeah, so you're probably looking at a 2-day cost of maybe $7,000-ish.
Since some of your groups have volunteers, do you ever try and amplify your workforce by allowing? No.
It's too much of a headache, unfortunately. That would just add another, oh, they can't be here that day, or they have to, or they want to be there, can you reschedule your burns? I would love for it to work out, but 9 times out of 10, it stops us from doing what needs to be done.
And they tend not to have protective equipment.
Is when you have a Cook County unit, so are you burning alongside Cook County, or are they?
Say it again?
Did you say about Cook County unit, like with Forest Reserve?
We have an open burn permit that allows us to burn to the Cook County Forest Reserve.
Uh-huh.
It's not site dependent, it's just for the whole county,
Are you
for their
working-
reserves.
So do you work with them? I'm sorry.
No, they direct us.
Okay.
They give us the list of sites that they want to burn in the season, and then they tell us where to go
Gotcha.
a day or 2 in advance. They're really good about it. They're not the expert or the other problematic client that we have.
What's the average size of your burn units?
I would say they're probably 10 to 20 acres on average. There's a lot of small ones that are just retention ponds for us, which gets difficult because anybody's burn a retention pond, they seem straightforward, but the heat management is a big thing on that one. The wind direction shifting between the houses is a huge issue. we'll do maybe 100-acre water plus, maybe once every 2 years-ish.
So is it cost prohibitive to let something burn, you're trying to put everything out before you leave?
We have to put everything out. County-wise, where a lot of the things burn out throughout the night, but on any of our sites, it has to burn. Unless it's a private residence, it's in the middle of nowhere, and they're gonna be okay with it, we'll let stuff smolder throughout the night. But 9 times out of 10, it's gotta be out cold before we leave.
So do you have a particular insurance company that you work with over the years?
It's just our standard insurance. There's nothing
What's
special
that?
about it. I've talked to Jack about that before I came down. He was like, it's just general liability. It's a high dollar amount, but it's a general liability
Does liability get put for you personally or?
company.
I have a question. Do you have a problem recruiting and retaining staff?
Yes, all the time.
Yeah.
It's been bad the last 4 or 5 years. It's just the work mentality, I believe. Everybody wants to run the company. Everybody doesn't want to put in their time to work without the company.